all. How are we? And hello, ladies.
Hey.
How are we?
Great. How are you?
You know. That's all I'll say.
Look, I'm getting ready to celebrate my son's birthday tomorrow, everybody, and y'all better keep.
Yep.
And it begins.
Peekaboo.
Yeah, you know how it does.
We need to find a new platform.
I'll try to come back to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Warriors of Attraction. We are going to be discussing if you are trapped or you literally just escaped in the narcissistic cycle. Now, this is very close to each and every one of us. And we're gladly and grateful to be joined by a narcissistic divorce coach named Victoria McCooey. I got his surname in one, by the way, Andrea. Got it in one. So, first of all, before we crack on, please share this. I know Andrea Evans is going to be playing hide and seek all show, but she's absolutely wonderful anyway. I still love her. We've got Andrea Mason, who's probably going to be bullying me today, but I still love her as well. Probably tell me to shut up, maybe. And please just share the shit out of this. So, any more intros? Andrea, have you got a poem? Andrea Mason, have you got a dance to do? I don't know.
No poem today. All I can say is be kind to yourself.
Andrea?
Amen. Yes, in this crazy game of life, press play. Plan life according to you. Woo!
See? There you go. Right.
Adam?
Yep.
You? What do you have to say?
I said let the show go ahead.
Okay.
See you soon. It would be good if I actually brought the guest on.
Yeah.
It's been a long day. Give me credit. Welcome, Victoria. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. And hello, Kerry, in the comments. Hope you are well, even though you probably can hear me. I don't know. Yeah, please all bring your experiences and your questions in the comments. We would love to hear about your cycle. So, would any of you ladies like to start?
So I guess the first way would be for the audience, what actually is a narcissist? Let's get clear vision, because I know a lot of people have skeptical vision of, oh, it's such and this, it's such and such that has these traits. But let's get down to the root cause or the root of what a narcissist is.
Okay. So people throw this term around very loosely today. And not that long ago, nobody even knew what it was, but it is a personality disorder. And you would have to be diagnosed by a psychiatrist to confirm that you're actually a narcissist. But in everyday life, we're talking about people with narcissistic traits, right? So yes, there are criteria. There are 9 factors that you would have to meet 6 of in order to be diagnosed as a narcissist. But for our purposes, we're talking about people who have narcissistic traits. And we all have some narcissistic traits. You have to be a healthy person, you have to have a little bit of narcissism so that you have self-esteem, self-worth, confidence. So we're all on a spectrum. But when someone is so far on the other end of the spectrum that their behaviors become toxic to you, then we say they're narcissistic.
Okay. And what would be those traits? Are we going to get a little bit deeper
Yes,
dive?
I can absolutely talk to you about the ones that are the most prevalent, that make people toxic to be in a relationship with, are when they have no empathy. So narcissists lack empathy, meaning they can't put themselves in someone else's shoes, right? They just are missing that gene that helps them understand how to feel what another person might feel. They know that other people can do that, and they might pretend that they're doing that, but they really can't. Another trait is that they're very grandiose, right? They think they're bigger and better and more important. Also, the sense of entitlement that you better obey the rules, but I don't have to, right? I'm different. I'm special. I'm above the law. Like, the rules don't apply to me, but they're very particular about everybody else adhering to all the rules. So those are the most common ones that that people notice and have trouble being in a relationship with someone when they're like that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much for that clarity, because again, a lot of people do use that term very lightly. You know, if somebody's self-absorbed or doesn't have the ability to relate to somebody else, they throw that there without looking at the pre-existing conditions, the settlements, and other traits that you have made.
Right. So I think a better way for us to morph that is, instead of just blatantly calling people narcissists, we can just say, wow, that behavior was really narcissistic.
Now, would you, I don't want to monopolize, go ahead, guys, but I just want to ask one other quick clarity for clarification. Would you, first of all, we don't have a right to judge anyone, number one, and first and foremost. That's number one that we have to kind of understand as individuals, as family members, professionals, leaders, and so forth, that we don't have the right to judge. Do you think it is possible or have the capability to address someone who has narcissistic traits, that they have that, or based on your pre-existing explanation, because they have that flat act, that inability to have empathy or see an emotional component, if you will, as well as, hey, I'm above the law, I'm entitled, or would it just go right over their head, out of sight, out of mind?
One of the traits is that they are not accountable. They can't take responsibility. So they're not ever going to say, they can't self-reflect, right? Because they won't take any responsibility. Everything that goes wrong is someone else's fault. They can never be accountable for their actions. So these people don't do well in therapy. It's hard to get them to go because they won't admit that there's anything wrong with them.
Right.
They're not incentivized to change. They're not upset about the way they are. They like it that way. This is not a problem for them. So it's kind of a lose-lose, right? They're really not incentivized to change.
Interesting. Thank you.
Andrea, anything?
Well, when you talk about the spectrum, I want to know, you know, when we have to do self-care, we do have to think of ourselves. You know what I mean? Does that fall in the spectrum?
Sure. We all have to be able to set our own boundaries, take care of ourselves, make ourselves a priority at times, have self-worth and self-esteem, right? So yeah, we have a little bit of that. It's just like I said, if you go too far in those areas and you always put yourself above everyone all the time, then your behavior gets toxic to other people.
Right. Okay.
So what I see in my work, because I work with people who are stuck in these marriages to somebody like that, and typically they were targeted by a narcissistic person because of their empathy, because they're sort of the opposite. You know, they're very selfless people. They're people pleasers. They take on the responsibility. They take on the guilt. They take on the blame. They take everything on, you know, so they have low self-esteem. And it's sort of a match made in heaven, because the narcissistic person has so much self-esteem. So it's a really difficult dynamic. So the people I'm working with need to become more, do more self-care, have more self-esteem to be able to stand up for themselves in this toxic relationship.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I would like to know your experience with all of this. Like before you became this divorce coach, like what was your background? Like how did you come about it? Was it like experience?
You caught me, because I can't imagine that anyone would do this if they hadn't lived it firsthand, right? Like, why would you even be interested in dealing with something like this?
Right.
So, yes, my first marriage was a very narcissistic relationship, a toxic relationship with a narcissistic spouse. But like I said, nobody knew what that was back then.
Yeah.
So, and I, looking back at who I was at that point in my life, I was the perfect target. You know, I was exactly what a narcissistic person would want. I had low self-esteem. I was alone. I was isolated. I was far away from my support system. I was really an easy target. So it all makes sense to me now. And I really, because I felt so bad about myself, I thought I was so lucky, right, that this person would even be with me. And then that person, that fed his ego, right? And it just spiraled because I was controlled by thinking I can't do anything wrong because I'm not worthy. And then abuses became worse and worse as the years went on. And that's typically how it goes.
Right. I'm sorry, Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, obviously you picked up on the word control there. And obviously for those that are stuck in that cycle and are very unaware of the control, what sort of control can be experienced? Because it could be like financial.
Yes, there's all kinds of control, and not just from my personal experience, but now I've seen with so many other people in their relationships. This wasn't really the case for me, but the typical control I see is that physical control. The narcissistic spouse needs to know everything about your comings, your goings, where you are, who you see, who you're talking to. I mean, I've seen people with husbands or ex-husbands show up at their work, not believing causing them to lose jobs, calling incessantly, somebody going to a movie with a girlfriend and being followed because they just are obsessed with the idea that you're going to cheat on them because that's what they would do. That's what they're probably doing. And that's called projection. When they are doing something, they're thinking, well, that's what I do. So that must be what he or she would do too.
Right. It's funny you mentioned that because, that I've had that experience in younger years of relationships. And looking back, as you said, in hindsight, it's literally filling each other's void. You have the low self-esteem, the individual who has no identity, who's dealing with adversity and trying to come into their own, but has been shunned from every which way. Now you have this narcissist who appreciates them, but only appreciates them to be their puppet master, if you will.
Right, their supply.
Now I have a person to feed off of.
Exactly right. Exactly.
Yes, absolutely. And that was difficult because I was young at the time, and it was funny because no matter who I talked to, no matter where I was, they had to know. And I was like, what? At first it was like, oh, that's sweet because you're naive and you're vulnerable. But then at the second time, as it was getting on further and further, it was just like, wait a minute. Why are you check? Because then you kind of have that moment of not an epiphany, but like awareness of, wait a minute, should I be doing the same thing? But then you have that mindset, well, if I do that, I'm controlling him. That's the vulnerable one. That's the one who has the low self-esteem.
Right.
So I totally understand that. And it's funny. It's not funny, but for the individuals out there, be mindful of that. And take what Victoria's saying is of your identity. Are you confident or incompetent? Because if you don't know that, you'll be the other side looking for the opposite.
Listen, when a narcissist is attracted to you, it's really the highest compliment ever, because they are attracted to people who are very intelligent, overachievers, people with good qualities like integrity, empathy, all these wonderful traits that they don't have.
Right.
So they're attracted, they actually admire you, but then to make themselves feel better, they have to cut you down.
Exactly.
And tell you all those things about you or make you weak or stupid or whatever. So it's sort of like this gaslighting that we talk about, right? They're making you think something that doesn't make sense, and you start believing it because of that mind control. They are so manipulative and so good at what they do that they can change your mind and make you think, oh, being really nice to people is really bad, or whatever.
Right. And that's and that's what I experienced, the constant appraisal, but then let's chop at the news immediately.
Sorry.
Yeah.
On the
that's it.
So
Peekaboo.
So obviously, I know Andrea's going to want to talk after she played hide and seek with us all, but
if I come off the show again, I'm probably just going to drop off and you won't see me no more because I'm getting irritated with this. I'm going to tell everybody it's getting on my nerves.
Oh, no. That's not
Just
good.
saying.
Yeah, that's not good. But
yeah, I'm not going to keep coming
obviously,
in and out.
We know narcissists can impact their own relationships, their own children, and the surroundings. But what are they like when it comes to grandchildren and nieces and nephews and stuff like that?
Well, that's outside of my wheelhouse. I specialize in marriages to narcissists. Now, believe me, it usually is generational, right? It is usually something that you either the narcissist had a parent who was narcissistic, or like in my case, the victim has a parent who is narcissistic. And so that's inside your comfort zone. Now, is your question, does somebody like a grandparent treat their grandchild that way? Is that what you mean?
It's just that in general, because obviously, I know narcissists they do have that control, that power over their own relationships.
Yeah.
At the same time, they could easily manipulate that person away from their own family. For example, kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, you name it.
Well, yeah, I have seen a lot of that. Again, that's not who I work with, but once a narcissist, always a narcissist, right? They are that way with everyone in their life. It's not just for spouses.
Wow.
That's right. That's true. I can see that. I mean, I sometimes I think my children are narcissistic.
How so?
Yeah, how so?
Their dad said I was a spoiler. So I probably, spoiled them a little too much sometimes. And what does that turn into? The expectation.
Oh
no.
Oh, man.
At some point, I mean, isn't it on the cusp of codependency? This behavior.
Well, that's what happens when these two different personality types are together, because like I said, one is the perfect target for the other. It's very symbiotic. Like the person with low self-esteem is drawn to this very charismatic outgoing, big, grandiose person and like, oh, lucky me, lucky me. How could I be so fortunate that someone that big, right, seemingly important or seemingly smart or seemingly handsome or whatever would want to be with little old nothing me. And then the narcissistic person is like, oh, here's a perfect victim for me because I can control them because I have that person right where I want them. They think they're nothing and I'm everything, and I can make sure that they do everything the way I want them to. And yeah. And then as it goes on, the behaviors become more controlling and more controlling and more controlling to the point where at some point the victim is like, this is not working for me anymore, right? This is too much. And then the more the victim tries to make boundaries, the more abusive the narcissist has to get to keep them. And that's how it sort of escalates and gets to a fever pitch where in my work, the disruption has to be a divorce because the narcissist is not going to change. Like we were talking about going to therapy, even if you get them to go to therapy, which is hard, they're not going to change. They can't change and they don't want to change anyway. So they might tell you in an attempt to love bomb you to get you back. They might tell you, oh yeah, I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to change. I'm going to do everything the way you want me to. And they'll say whatever it takes to get what they want, which in this case is for you not to divorce them. And then as soon as they're over that hump and you're back, well, it all goes right back to normal. So there's a statistic out there. The data shows that women go around that cycle of trying to leave and then getting sucked back into the relationship 7 times on average before they leave for good. So the narcissist is really good at reeling you back in and giving you all these fake promises about how things are going to change and they're going to do everything differently. And, we want to believe them. We don't want a divorce. That's not what we expected. Possibly you have children. You don't want to break up your family. You'll do almost anything to keep this marriage from breaking up. So it's understandable. Now, 7 is a lot of times, and that's the average. So, women tend to go too far, I think, in giving them the benefit of the doubt too many times. So that's why these shows are really important for people to know that this is what this is. You're not making this up in your head. This is a thing. And you're not crazy. It's going to, this is the pattern. It's the same for everyone. And there are lots and lots of people out there going through what you're going through.
Yeah, thanks for that. Right, the big one. What's the difference between a woman narcissist and a man narcissist?
Not much.
Not much?
Not much. I mean, they have the same traits. The psychiatrist is not going to say, oh, here's my list for a female and here's my list for a male. They're the same traits they're ticking off. They might manifest a little differently, the grandiosity might look a little different in a female than in a male, but it's still grandiosity, still sense of entitlement, still lack of responsibility.
It's the traits.
Okay.
It's more the traits.
Yeah.
What you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. It's funny, about not feeling like you're not alone. And it's so great that there's so much information now on this. And the downside is that everybody's throwing the word around saying everybody's a narcissist now. But the good news is that people are more aware. Back when I was in my toxic marriage, it was a long time ago. There was no Google. There was no social media. Nobody knew that word. Nobody knew what that was. I didn't think anyone had ever gone through anything like what I was going through in my marriage. I mean, mine was very severe. I mean, there was a lot of, not physical abuse, but there was a lot of verbal and emotional and financial abuse. So I didn't think anyone would even believe me if I told them, because my ex-husband had a very charming personality. People thought he was great. Nobody knew what was going on. And it wasn't until...
Closed doors.
Yep. It wasn't until the very first day when we were separated and he had the children, the first time I had 3 very young children, I was alone and I had time. Like I wasn't carting kids around everywhere. I went to the library with my free day and they literally had to kick me out to close because I didn't leave all day. I went to the psychiatry section and I just started looking through all the reference books. And when I found this, I couldn't stop absorbing it, because I didn't know anything about it. And it was like they were writing about my life. And it was so vindicating. Like, it's not me. It's not me. Like, this is a thing.
Okay. What I'd like to know is after Andrea stops braiding her hair. Obviously, I know we've all got our views, but lockdown, which happened, the marriages that come your way, what were they like compared to before lockdown happened?
I mean, it skyrocketed, right? Because people were forced to spend all this time together. So even if a marriage was toxic, it was manageable if you were spending 2 hours together a day at dinner time and that was it. You could go your own, but it escalated when everybody was trapped together with their abusive partner. Yeah. It was really toxic and it just expedited the whole process. Somebody that might have ended up deciding to leave their marriage 10 years from now, it was happening sooner. Everything just became faster. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know how hard it is. And I see my clients every day who are having to live with their abusive spouse and planning to leave, but you can't just, you have to be cautious. You have to take precautions. You have to do a lot of preliminary work before you just leave a marriage, right? So they're in the process of getting strong enough to leave. And I know how hard that is. So can you imagine just indefinitely just being locked up in a house with this person?
You have to have more than one plan, don't you, in case you get caught? Yeah.
That's what we do in my programs. We take precautions. We talk about what they need to do to prepare emotionally and financially and all the ways and how they can have a game plan and hopefully be successful the first time.
Andrea's?
Go ahead, Andrea.
When I'm still stuck on the spectrum of narcissism, you're talking more extreme. So when I'm speaking about my children, I'm talking about the expectation. I think sometimes expectations and labels that we wear can cause people to be on that spectrum of narcissism. Entitlement.
But I think, Andrea, the difference here is like, when does that become toxic to another person? It may be unbecoming in your opinion, right? But is it hurting you? Is it unhealthy? That's right. So that's where the difference lies. When people have been in this sort of an abusive relationship for years, it's very compromising. Their self-esteem is whittled away. You become a shell of a person, right? You have this brain fog because you're told it's called gaslighting, right? You're told what you remember is wrong or what you believe is wrong, or they will make you think whatever they need for you to believe to make their narrative true. So they have this false reality and they're making you live in it with them. So you're confused all the time. So all this stress, this anxiety, and the walking on eggshells, right? Because you never know what the next thing is going to be. They're explosive, they're unpredictable, they're dramatic, they love keeping you like that because you're easier to control when you're off balance like that. So, this is why they throw that 11th hour wrench into any plan you have, it's always that last minute upset that, and the person that they're doing it to is a person who is a type A person, who likes to make plans, who likes to have everything organized, who makes lists, who crosses things off. Like, that's our personality. And then they feed off of that. So we're so easy to manipulate because of our personality type.
Yeah.
And when they pull the rug out from under us all the time, we're undone and so anxious about that. So we're animals, right? We're all animals. We're built just like animals. So when we feel this kind of a threat, like somebody, a predator almost, like you get anxious and nervous, and you go into that fight or flight kind of body chemistry, right? Just like the deer in the woods who's just drinking out of the brook, and then they see a predator, their whole body chemistry changes. And like their peripheral vision changes, their digestive juices, enzymes stop, because you're not eating, you're running for your life, and everything pivots so that this deer can take off and hide and run faster or whatever. But then for the deer in the woods, once the predator's gone, their body chemistry goes right back to normal. But we don't, because we're living with the predator 24/7. So our body chemistry is always whacked and compromised, and it wears down all the other parts of our body. So I have seen that whatever your Achilles heel is, whatever the thing is, like me, it's my stomach, my digestive system is my Achilles heel. So immediately I would get debilitating stomach pains and IBS, and it was my stomach. But other people, it's their back. Other people, it's migraines. Other people, it's fibromyalgia. Like, all these other things that doctors are like, oh, you're just stressed. They can't really fix it. They can't really tell what it's from. It's from this uncanny level of anxiety that you never get a break from.
No.
Yeah, I could definitely relate. I've experienced some of those relationships earlier on where even just the mere presence, that hair on the back of your neck, that tightness and that cringe, I just remember it. And and again, at that time, there was no speaking of it. It was taboo, and you were crazy. Oh no, you're making yourself do that. And
right.
No, because my mind was literally flipped, was so manipulative. Like, I would always question and doubt, well, maybe they're right. Yeah, wait a minute. And then I would totally lose my identity. I wouldn't think right. I wouldn't be able to speak right. I wouldn't be able to communicate. It debilitating. And I think one of the things that what we're using loosely that is a concern, because I'm really glad, that's why at the top of the hour to give the actual definition and an example, is because the younger generations and some people today have the traits of what Andrea is speaking about. Those people that make you feel uneasy, the naysayers, the non-believers, pointing the fingers, making you uncomfortable, making you doubt yourself. But as far as a narcissist or anyone in that category, it's 100 times worse. You can't even think right, where you will literally stop dead in your tracks after 10, 20, 30 years of how you think you are, and they will completely manipulate it and scratch everything, and you firmly believe it.
Look, if you haven't had any experience dealing with a person like this, good for you. Yeah. Lucky you, right? But you can't understand this if you've never experienced it. It's unlike anything else. So how do you describe that to someone?
Right.
I mean, we're all rational people. Like, when you have a conversation with someone, or even a disagreement, you plot out your arguments, right? You make, well, this is why I think this, and this because of this, and you use examples, and you try to express your opinion, right? And then you listen to the other person's explanation of their opinion and how they make their points, and you go, oh, well, I understand what you're saying. I still believe what I think, or you agree to disagree or whatever. That isn't how narcissists work.
No.
It is they'll get into an argument with you if you don't subscribe to whatever crazy notion they're trying to throw out at you, then you're the enemy, right? So now they'll just keep arguing, and they're making points, but the points don't
Connect.
lead anywhere, right?
Right.
So we're rational. So we're sitting there listening to, we call it word salad. They're just throwing out things. There was something that happened yesterday, something that happened 5 years ago. And then when you said this, and then when you said that, and you're trying to see how point A gets to point B, but it doesn't. And so you're like, eventually you just have to walk away because it never ends. And then that's what they want. When they wear you down, they go, well, see, now I win because you're not arguing anymore. So you agree with me.
Right.
And you're just like, by that point, you're fried. You're just, your brain is fried. And you're like, whatever, I don't even care anymore.
Or they flip the script and say, see, it's your fault. You don't care about me. I proved everything that I said naysaying about you and flipped it. And
Yes.
what I actually was coaching somebody who was having concerns about a narcissistic family member or friend or someone in their community, in their connection. And I said, you know what? You have to understand, it's not a reflection of you. It's a reflection of them. That's all they've witnessed. That's all they observed. You cannot make logic with it.
Right.
Because you're going to wear yourself down. You're going to get burned out, and they're going to get the higher up every single time.
By the very end of my toxic relationship. So my divorce was so long ago that the state I live in the US was not yet a no fault state, which meant you had to prove grounds for divorce, right? So I went to a lawyer and they said, you don't have grounds for divorce. I'm like, are you listening to what I'm telling you? First of all, he was stealing all of my money. All the money that I made, he would intercept and take from me, and I wouldn't have any access to it. So there was this financial abuse. There was verbal abuse. There was emotional abuse. There was every other kind of abuse, but he had never hit me or touched me. So they told me, well, he had threatened to daily. He called me every day, like all these other things. But because he said, well, you don't have grounds. But he said, don't worry. Sooner or later, he'll hurt you. Then come back and see me.
And that's one of the things about narcissists, that a great amount of them won't. Because as soon as they do that, it puts them in the category of validating everything.
Right. So I had to get to a place. This is where my journey began, where I had to get to a place where I thought I was stuck. I thought I could never leave this toxic, abusive relationship, marriage. So I worked on myself to try to get to a place where I could live, like I could survive and not engage in the crazy. I have 3 children together, living in this insanity. And the money stuff was the biggest problem because he stole all the money and made stupid choices and bad decisions and debt and all this crazy stuff. So my goal was to find a way to get my money back and be in control of the money I made so I could make better choices for our family. And to do that, I had to just not take the bait, not engage. And I almost got to the point where I was laughing at the behaviors, at the crazy behaviors. So an example is one day I'm in my kitchen and he's backing out of our driveway. I can see him from the window. We hadn't even spoken before this. He hit a parked car across the street from us. And I'm laughing because I thought to myself, somehow this is my fault. Somehow he's going to come in here and tell me that it's my fault that he hit that car. As I'm inside watching this happen. And sure enough, he comes in and he said, that was your fault. And I said, really? How is that my fault? And he said, because this morning you said blah, blah, blah. And that's been on my mind ever since. And I was so mad about it that I was distracted. And that's why I hit the car. And there's no arguing with him about this. He had to blame me for that. So I just laughed. I just like, yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, you got to play the game. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Wow. How do we respond to that, Andrea?
I mean, like I said, I've experienced in a relationship with such, but it's difficult because you're constantly walking on eggshells. You're constantly, what am I going to get blamed for today? What am I going to do wrong? And as charming as they are is as vindictive as they can be. And that terrified me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. It is a scary moment. It really is.
Andrea,
Especially when,
sorry.
especially when you're trying to protect your family.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's another thing that I work on with my clients, because you think you're protecting your kids. You think you're doing the best thing by staying in this marriage because you don't want your children to have a divorced family.
Yeah.
But it's really like you're normalizing this for them. You're making them think this is okay, that this is normal and acceptable. And this is the role model that they have. And this is the behavior they're going to model after. So, your children are much better off having one healthy household, and being away from the toxic at least part of the time, so that you're their only hope for showing them what a normal household feels like. Because you can't overpower the narcissist. You can't do it in that household.
No, I agree. I agree.
And what's normal?
Yeah.
What's
Anything,
normal?
Andres?
Well, normal is, I think normal is being supportive and not, everybody has I'm remarried. So I have the unique experience of having been in a really unhealthy marriage and a really healthy marriage. So I can see firsthand how different they are and what makes them different. So of course I didn't have a comparison when I had my first one, but I see that the key is to be a partner, instead of one person wanting to control the other. It's a partnership. There's no competition. We have common goals that we support each other on. And so I really feel like when you are supportive of each other, that's what makes it healthy.
All right. Okay.
And that's through effective communication and listening. Would you say, Andrea, still that your children are in this category?
No, that's what I was saying. It's about the expectations. And when she talks about the spectrum, to me, expectation and labels, being a mother, those types of things can cause your children to feel entitled.
Yeah.
So no, I don't see them on that poisonous.
I know it's annoying. We get the gist of what you were saying.
Well, I'm glad they're not in that narcissist category, because that would be
Exactly.
very, very, very concerning.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Any
I'm looking
final
more at the
words,
spectrum
ladies?
again. The spectrum. She said we all have a little bit of it. So that's what I was hitting on.
Look, I think some of my clients don't have enough of it. I know I didn't have enough of it when I was younger. I think, I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach, but if I were a therapist, I think I would blame it on some of the parenting that I experienced, that maybe I had a narcissistic parent who made me feel not good enough. But we're responsible for ourselves. So there is a way out of that. You can do the work. The name of my program is Reclaim Your Power, which is what my clients are doing, right? They're reclaiming their power in themselves. They've given it up. They've handed it over to a narcissistic person, maybe not voluntarily, but that's what happens. They take it from you. So yeah, there is work that you can do to reclaim your power, to build back your self-esteem, your self-confidence, your self-worth, and make it possible for you to create healthy boundaries.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that, because that was one of the songs that was played, Reclaim Your Power, when we were, one of the things that I put on there, reclaiming your power from the naysayers, the non-believers, those who take you down, you know.
Are you going to sing it, Andrea?
No, absolutely not. No.
I'm trying to get her to sing.
I don't.
She's
sing.
a good singer as well.
So no. So this is what it says. So if you guys can hear, I will let them do it. So hold on.
I call my power back to me from every person, place, entity.
Yeah, it's just an excerpt. So she reclaims her power back from every person, place, or entity, you know. And it's not easy. It's not easy, because it is, like you said, for when I was trying to share, when I was working with sharing with people, this is what this person's doing. They're just like, what? They didn't get it. How can they not make any logical sense? How can they blame you for this? How can you be here? And then, you know, like there was men and women that they went after. Why are you talking to her? Why she shouldn't be talking to you? And I was just like, what? You know, but when you're caught in it, I was that yang that had low self-esteem. Oh my goodness, somebody cares about me. I'm loved. I have attention and stuff like that. But now you see the flip side of it. We were filling each other's voids, but then when I stepped out of it, I was just like, that gave me leverage to know what I'm grateful for and am able to have, but not to that extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep, it's a tough situation to be in a relationship with someone like that.
It really is. I've been there. I'm a survivor of a narcissist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He made me believe
think
my
we
whole
all
family
are.
didn't love me. The whole family didn't love me. Someone that can have that.
Oh, well, she's gone. But that was one of his favorite things, my ex-husband, to tell me that no one liked me. My mother didn't love me.
Wow.
Yeah, the narcissist always makes you the problem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, one time one of my kids wasn't invited to some kid's birthday party, and he totally blamed me. So, well, that's because of you. It's your fault. He wasn't invited.
Yeah, well,
Nobody likes
I've always picked up on, obviously from Alan Stevens, who's been on this numerous times, is if you're pointing at someone, yeah, one's at them, but they forget that three's pointing back at themselves.
Like, it's so easy to see when you're on the outside looking in, but when you're in it, it's hard.
Right.
It's so hard to see.
Yeah.
It's so hard to see. And if you think that being married to a narcissist is hard, it's even harder to divorce one. But it's it is necessary to get to the other side, right? So you've got to buckle up, you know? It's like, it's hard. It is the hardest thing I hope anyone ever has to do, because I can't imagine what could be harder. But as bad as they are when you're married to them, their biggest nightmare, their worst fear is abandonment. And this is what they see this as. You're leaving them. Even if they leave, even if they cheated or gambled away all the money or burned out, whatever, it doesn't matter. You're leaving them. So
I've got a question.
Yeah.
I've got a question, and it's after Kerry. How do you deal with a narcissist who's your parent?
Yeah, that's hard. That is so hard. You're going to grow into an adult. I don't know if you are an adult already.
Yes, she is.
Oh, she is. Okay.
She's my partner.
Oh. Hi. Yeah. So you have to make boundaries that only you know about. If you tell the narcissist parent that this is a boundary, they will be determined to step over it. Right. So this is your little secret that, okay, when he or she starts saying blah, 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 I'm going to say, somebody's at the door, I have to get off the phone. Or if you're in person, you're going to suddenly remember that you have to go pick something, whatever. But you have
I
this,
see where you're going with this.
you have a plan. When this happens, I do this. And that's your bound. But don't say, mom, say it's mom. Mom, if you start talking about blah, blah, blah again, I'm going to leave, because 100% she will start talking about it, because she has to overpower you. And then, you know, undo that. You're not going to tell her what to do. Right. So you have to make the commitment to yourself without telling anyone else that you have this plan in place, and that's your boundary. You've gone no contact. That's probably best. I mean, you know, that's a choice everybody has to make on their own. I would never tell somebody that's what they have to do, because that's a big thing. But it certainly is best if you're up for that.
Absolutely. All right. Any final words, ladies?
Thanks for being here, because I didn't think this conversation was going to be like this.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it. Andrea, what did you think? How is it different from what you thought?
I don't know. I guess I thought we were just going to talk about horrible narcissistic people. And you helped me to understand that we all have a little bit in us. You know what I'm saying? Not poisonous, but I learned something new about it. And it's not all what I thought it was. I put it all on one side. Bad, bad, bad.
Which it is. I have that intention as well.
Well, good. So yeah, it's been made to be a bad word in our society. So yeah, it's good to know that you should have a little healthy dose of good self-esteem, good self-worth, confidence. Those are important things to have. And that will,
Andrea?
you know, people say, how do I recognize a narcissist so that I don't get into another relationship with them? So I like to always flip the script on that and say, well, if you work on yourself and have good self-esteem and boundaries in place and high self-worth, narcissists aren't going to be interested in you. So you don't have to worry about detecting them, right? You're just going to repel them.
Andrea?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, this has been very informative. And had I known, you know, I'm grateful it happened in my younger years and that I had the heightened awareness when I was vulnerable and had no identity. But I really think, you know, we have to be mindful of our words and our perspectives before we, again, at the beginning of the show, don't judge other people. Don't put labels or stigmatisms or compartmentalize, because you have not walked in their shoes and you have no right to judge. Do what Victoria does and educate yourself. What are the traits? What are the qualities? What are the mechanisms? What are the personality traits? And never have them defined by you, but understand the definition. Because when we put ourselves at the labels that anybody has put upon us, we're giving power to them and we're losing our self-confidence and self-worth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right, final one. Where can people find you?
VictoriaMcCooey.com. Also, I have a substantial YouTube channel where I have a lot of content on this, on married to, divorcing from, or co-parenting with a narcissistic spouse, ex-spouse. Also Instagram, TikTok. You can find me always at Victoria McCooey.
Awesome. Right. Well, thanks, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, next week we're going to be raising aspirations for our kids. So we're basically backing onto this one. Have you not noticed that? We're doing that. We've got Sabrina Salami. So, and we're back at our original time, by the way, ladies.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Excellent.
There we go.
You, Victoria. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Right. See you next week.